Welcome to the webinar tonight. Here we've got really fortunate enough to have a special guest, Michaela Haet. My name's Ryan Henry. I'll be the host for this evening. So, Mickey, welcome to the call.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, nice. So tonight we've got some parents from Australia and Sydney and also Singapore as well. So the format of tonight's interview, so basically I'm going to ask sort of Mickey a series of questions for around 25, sort of 30 minutes. We're going to talk a bit about her background, and then afterwards we're going to open that up to questions at all from any of the players, parents or coaches on the call tonight. So a little bit about Mickey's background. So Mickey, I first was very fortunate enough to start coaching Mickey when she was around 11 years old. She became a really top ranked Australian junior. She won a couple of ITF Futures events right after she graduated from high school. So a professional level player. Got a full scholarship to Rice University, so one of the best colleges in the US, and probably one of the top 50 colleges around the world. So got a great education, and so it's been Mickey sort of worked with us for a long time before going over to the US. And so Mickey, tell us a little bit about your background. What age you got started playing tennis?
Yeah, so I am fortunate enough that I actually have a tennis court at my house, and my dad plays tennis and his mom played tennis, so it's sort of in the family. So I sort of started at about 5 or 6 because he was playing and we had a court and it was just fun. Like, me and my sisters would jump on the court all the time and play. And then I think they sort of started to have enough of it at some point, but I really loved it. And so I started playing more seriously. My parents, put me in some different camps, started getting coaching, but I honestly didn't really start taking tennis seriously until I met Ryan when I was about 10 or 11. And I can't remember who told us about you, but someone recommended you and we were like, okay, like we'll give it a go. And it was probably the best decision that I made, definitely in my tennis career. And yeah, so then, 10 or 11, I still wasn't really sure. I was like, I wasn't sure how serious I wanted to take it. But then I realized I was actually pretty good. And I had a really good work ethic when I got a bit older, and it sort of just took off. So yeah, that's sort of a little bit of me.
Just to the record, I didn't pay Mickey to say that.
No, I actually genuinely think that, because I mean, so much of it is just, the luck of like, who tells you about a great coach, or sort of like who helps you like uncover like the best parts of your game, which I'm sure like we'll get into a bit later. But yeah, I was super, super lucky to have had you like from such a young age, whipping me into line, sort of teaching me how to take it more seriously. And so that was great as well.
Yeah. And I guess we'll sort of we'll kick off onto that as a question. So one of the really interesting parts about sort of I guess coaching and working with Mickey at a young age, it was around that 10 or 11, was that there was now that you say that you weren't sure whether you were committed or not, I just specifically remember, and we talked about this the other day, the amount of times that you were looking at your watch during a tennis lesson was unbelievable. And to this day, I've never had a student that I've ever caught looking at their watch during a tennis lesson, but it was clearly one of those things where it was like a bit of a chore to go out there and do a lesson. So you sort of made that, I guess, transformation from someone that was really dabbling in tennis. I wouldn't say you worked really hard at all in the beginning. It felt like, as I said, it looked like it was a chore for you to take lessons. And then within a space of about 2 years, you went from what I would say like from a tennis coach's perspective, it was a pretty tough lesson when you've got someone that's half interested in being on the court, to then 2 years later, when you're probably 13 or 14, you're one of the top seeds at nationals and really kicking a lot of goals. What do you want to maybe talk through, I guess, what that transformation was like? I know there was a lot of tough lessons that we had on the court, and I was trying to get the best out of you, but yeah, what were your sort of early thoughts around going from someone that I'd say would be relative, disinterested, a bit lazy, to someone that's just a workhorse?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's sort of weird because at a young age, your parents, you tell your parents that you enjoy something, and then they're like, okay, like let's get lessons. So they sort of push you towards something. But I think it like at some part of me, like I didn't have that motivation. So my parents were like, okay, well, if you want to get good at tennis, like you have to do this, you have to actually put in the effort. But there wasn't really that self motivation. And I think when I actually discovered that I actually really wanted to get good, and I was like, well, I'm putting in all this effort anyway, so let's actually see how good I can get. That's really when I sort of made the jump. I also think a massive part of what helped me was just like really concentrating on like key things that Ryan and I would talk about. Like, for example, like I'm pretty quick. So actually spinning the ball instead of just hitting it flat, because that's not an advantage for me. So when I actually started taking these bits of tactical advice on board, that's when I definitely made the jump, because I actually had some sort of structure to my game. And, it's hard when you're like 11 or 12 to sort of figure out what your style is, because you're still kind of just getting to the hang of things and just, starting to take it seriously. But I think, yeah, really taking on those sort of little bits of tactical bits, like really finding out what is best for your tennis. Like if you're quick, like then maybe you're going to be more of a grinder. Maybe you need to shape the ball more. If you're not so quick, if your movement's not great, maybe you need to be more of a first strike sort of tennis player. So for me, it was just really figuring out what I was actually good at, and then sort of using that to evolve my game.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point there, because I can really specifically remember there was, like, as I said, a lot of really kind of tough lessons. You weren't really interested, or weren't super engaged. You were kind of out there for a bit of fun, hitting a few balls around. And I remember looking at your game, and you were you were really fast, really light. You wouldn't have weighed more than 30 kilos, I think, as a 10 or 11-year-old. Could have
Definitely
blown
changed.
over it. Could have blown over in the wind. and and I remember as a coach thinking, that's like, and you hit the ball really flat and hard. You were trying to finish the points off in one or two shots. And I remember thinking that was such a waste of fitness. Like you're never going to challenge. You'll never utilize your fitness or tire other players out if you're continually hitting at first strike and finishing the points early. So I remember that was a really key part of your development as a young, at that 10 or 11-year-old, was age, was to develop different swings, so you're getting more topspin on the ball. And I really remember specifically there was a session, I still go back to it, at the Mowbray Road hard courts, where one day it all clicked. It was just a training session, and you literally like stop missing, and I think maybe the light bulb sort of went on for you, from you there. And you had a massive amount of success from that point, just, playing the wrong game style. Basically, you had a few technical flaws, but you were playing the wrong game style for your physical characteristics. And then really from there, I remember your ranking went from 40 or 50 in the country. Before you know it, you're inside 10, and then you were knocking it, in the top couple in Australia for your age. And it was really about that. I mean, do you want to talk through a little bit about what won you matches, I guess? Because that's a great way to play as a 12 and under, 13, 14 and under player. You can win through making a lot of balls. Do you want to maybe talk through what that was like to win, finding your optimal game style at that age, and then what transition you had to go through, because you couldn't play like that forever. Maybe talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I definitely, when I was younger, I still am. I'm naturally a bit more of like a grinder. I mean, I don't love like the attacking sort of side of tennis, but obviously with women's tennis, it has to get to that. But yeah, so maybe I'm thinking, yeah, at about 13 or 14, I think just being like really quick and having that sort of shape that a lot of girls didn't have was super effective for me. And I think what became a bit troublesome for me was when I actually got a bit older and people get stronger and they start hitting it really hard. And I know, Ryan, this is something we struggle with, was actually getting my swings like a bit shorter, actually being able to deal with a bit of pace, because it's easier when you're younger and people aren't hitting it that hard, to have these big swings and just to sort of use that shape and only the shape. Because that's honestly like the only thing I had going for my game, was just that I didn't miss much and I had a lot of spin on my balls, but I couldn't really step in. I wasn't really doing anything. But yeah, so the biggest change for me was actually being able to incorporate both the attack and defense into my game. Obviously, I still, I'm not going to step in on every shot and try and crush it, but just recognizing those opportunities and taking them. Because even what I'm finding now is if you don't take that opportunity, like the second it comes and you miss it, like you're out of the point. So yeah, I think for me, just taking those opportunities and having different elements to your game, like you have to have more than one element to your game, because you're going to play people who have different game styles, and you're not always going to match up great against them. That's also something we spoke about a lot is, Ryan would sometimes, we'd have lessons and he'd be like, okay, now I'm going to hit it really flat and you're going to have to deal with that. We're going to work on you shortening your swings. Or he would play someone who slices a lot, and so I'd have to deal with that. So being able to sort of handle those different game styles and actually be able to deal with really fast balls coming my way was so important. I know men's tennis is a little bit different, but just from the women's side, being able to handle that sort of game style was critical.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's a key thing that I think a lot of juniors go through. You can win a lot of matches when you're, at a young age through making a lot of balls. And then as you start progressing into really ITF level events, you need to have an attacking game as well as a good defensive game as well. So, and I think too, one of the things that was really interesting, I guess, with your sort of game style was that and this is a good lesson, I guess, for other players too. There's certain conditions that are very favorable to your game style where you would play really well, and then you could basically play at Newcastle on the synthetic grass, and you literally play the worst, play terrible tennis. So do you want to maybe talk through, because I think it's a really good thing, I think, for players to be aware of that. What were your favorable conditions? What tournaments would you ideally sort of look for when you're kind of playing your best tennis?
Yeah, I think my first thing is just to say is I think sometimes you feel like you have to play every tournament. Like there's a tournament here and it's on, really quick sand grass and it has a ton of sand on it. And I was like, okay, well, it's a tournament, so I should play it. But the thing is that doesn't suit everyone's game. And so you shouldn't always play tournaments. In my opinion, I wouldn't always play tournaments. Just so I would recommend. You can hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have mute on. So guys, just a quick reminder, if you are on the webinar tonight, if you can just mute yourself just so there's no background noise, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, so sort of as I was saying is you don't have to play every tournament just because tournaments are actually there. And I think for me, my most favorable conditions is like a slow, bouncy, hard court. And you don't find that everywhere. And that's why, some of my results, and I would give myself such a hard time for losing some of these matches that I should win on, on a hard court or a slower, bouncier hard court. And I think then, Ryan and I spoke about this. He was like, well, why are you playing tournaments on conditions that just don't suit you? I mean, there's times when you definitely have to adapt, but I think in conditions that just don't suit you at all, I don't think it's, I don't necessarily think that it's something that you have to do to really help your tennis career. Yeah. But I don't know, Ryan, do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I think particularly once you get to a professional level, it's about picking the right tournaments for your game styles. We see that. So I saw that all the time when I was briefly playing on the pro circuit. That Australians, they go over to Europe, they want to play on the clay, and literally everybody, all the Europeans and South Americans, they play so well on the clay. And as growing up on the hard courts and that, or synthetic grass in Australia, it's just really, really hard to compete. So that's what we find, I guess, at a pro level, you start to get really selective in the tournaments that you play, because there's certain conditions that are really going to favor your game. And you might, I know in Mickey's case, it was because she had quite a unique game style. You'd play on a fast sand grass court and you'd lose 6-3, 6-3 to a player. And then the next week you play them on a bouncy hard court and you'd win straight sets quite comfortably as well. So it was literally huge differences. And a lot of people, I think, don't realize how big an impact tennis balls have on the conditions. If you use like a fast, light tennis ball, the courts will play really quick. And then if you use a different tennis ball or synthetic grass and you've got a slide, there's all these kinds of different variables, I think, that are really important to know. But I think as a junior in general, one of the things that we always encourage is early on, play huge amounts of matches, play on every different condition. And then once you're sort of at the point where you're playing on the pro circuit, and that you're starting to select events. I think that the events you won were in Thailand, right? So I gather, your pro events that you won, would have been those kind of nice high bouncing sort of conditions, right?
Yeah, the conditions were perfect for me. And since fitness is like such a big part of my game, it's so hot and humid in Thailand, and people cramp and they just lose it and they get really tired. And that's something I sort of thrive in those conditions. So I was loving it.
Nice. The question is, why aren't you playing in tournaments in Thailand now?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, there isn't really any tournaments in Asia at the moment. There was a few, I think, in the last few weeks, but I had, my masters and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there really isn't much in Asia moving forward, I think, for the next few months.
Yeah, definitely. And so we're obviously working together a lot when you were younger, from probably 10, 11 through to 14. And then Luke Bourgeois, one of our partners and our director of performance at Voyager, started working with you and had a lot of success with you at building a game from a junior game into basically having, playing successfully at a pro level by winning pro events. What were some of the things, I guess, that you remember, you recall that you guys were working on at the time that sort of really helped you go to the next level and compete at a pro level?
So Luke is super big on like footwork and footwork patterns, which I'm sure like he tells most of your students and everything. And I think just for me, like getting the right footwork patterns, because I honestly still do this a little bit and I still try and work on it, is like minimizing sort of unnecessary like steps. Because people always tell you like take as many steps as you can. But what Luke sort of really taught me is like, no, like be efficient in your movement and, have it so it makes sense. And so you're only taking a couple of steps, but they actually mean something. And so we worked a lot on different footwork patterns. We did a ton of stuff, a ton of different sort of work on the rise as well, that sort of stuff. But I would say most of it was footwork. Most of it was really helping me just sort of, I would say like maximize my like speed, because sometimes I was fast, moving side to side, but then forward was something different. So it was just sort of making sure that I was efficient around the court. But I mean, we worked on everything, to be honest, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, that's no, really, really good insights there. The question I just sort of had was, just to sort of regress a little bit, is just around, I guess, we always talk about parents playing, a massive role and almost playing the absolute critical role in, a player's development. So, you recognize that early on. You were just kind of cruising along and, you said to your parents you wanted to be good, and they said, well, hey, you've got to. They were ultimately the ones that, sort out your private coach. They sorted your schedule. They drove you to tennis. They did all those sorts of things for you, and did an exceptional job at that. What type of parents, do you want to talk through what type of parents you sort of had, as far as, you've seen probably every different type of tennis parent there is, but yeah, how would you describe your parents?
So my parents were like by no means like easy on me. They were very hard on me, but in a productive way. I think that's what's most important. My parents never got mad at me when I lost matches, because they knew that I was trying my hardest, and that like it feels terrible to lose for like a kid when they're 14, and that you're putting everything into it. So that was something that I really liked. Honestly, it was probably more me getting mad at them, blaming them, which obviously wasn't their fault. But they were very supportive. I mean, definitely hard on me, that if I didn't feel like training one day, they weren't like, oh yeah, that's fine, like, just take some time off. They were like, well, if you want to be good, like you don't just take days off when you're not really feeling, when you don't really want to. So they sort of put pressure on me, like in a positive way, sort of moving forward. But they didn't, yeah, but it was all productive, and they weren't. I mean, the worst thing parents can do is sort of push kids when they don't want to play. Like they pushed me because they knew I wanted to play, and they knew I wanted to be really good. But yeah, they're super supportive. They only got mad at me when my attitude or behavior on court was bad, which was, I definitely needed someone occasionally to be like, that's not on. But yeah, I mean, we didn't, and also like, we didn't always talk about tennis. Like we did, we did other stuff. I did have a life. So it wasn't like I didn't feel this immense like pressure from them, which was really nice. Like all I felt was really support.
Yeah, that's nice. I know that's it's interesting you say that they were quite sort of hard and tough, because I didn't see, I guess, as much of that side. I always saw them being, I mean, they always were, super supportive of you. Interestingly, when we had that quick discussion the other day, you made that really interesting comment when, I guess, you weren't working hard on the court in some of our really early lessons when your attitude wasn't great. There was a couple of times there where I pushed you pretty hard, and I think there was some discipline. I was getting you to run laps and do push-ups and stuff like that. And I think there was a few tears. And I remember calling up, I think it was your mum, and just saying, "Oh, hey, we had a really tough lesson today." Vicky was a bit upset that, hey, she wasn't working hard, so I had to let her know, let her know where the line is, and they were always really supportive. But you made a comment actually that, because I actually thought, oh, maybe I'm getting Mickey to breaking point here, but you sort of made that comment the other day. Do you want to maybe talk through that? How they were sort of, they didn't try and put the blame on me. They were just...
Yeah, no, I thought this was interesting because I think a lot of the times, just from what I've observed, and every parent is different, but if a coach or something sort of, I don't want to say like reprimand, but like points something out that they're not happy with, with their play, a lot of the parents are like super defensive, like, and sort of try and find a new coach and whatever. And Ryan actually, funnily enough, said, I thought maybe you were going to try and find a different coach, or maybe you weren't happy with it. And I was like, no, I actually never even considered that, because I always knew that it was like, I always knew it was my fault. I got upset, and I definitely was sort of sometimes mad. I was like, why is he making me do this sort of thing? But I mean, I knew why. But you know what? I actually think that was so crucial that you did that, because I think nowadays, like, if a kid is on court and like not trying, there's no point. And you would say this to me. You were like, well, there's no point in me like to keep feeding to you if you're not going to try, or you're not going to put a full effort in. And I think, and it's funny because now, like, every training session, I always am super respectful of coaches, and I will always put like 100% effort in. So that's kind of funny for me. But yeah, no, I mean, the blame was never on Ryan. And I think that's interesting because my parents also knew that as well. Like, they sort of knew me, and they sort of knew, they trusted Ryan, and sort of the path that he was taking. And I don't know if many coaches sort of take that approach these days, but it was, it's tough love, but it was good. And you know what, actually, one more thing just about that is I actually handle criticism really well, sort of because of that upbringing. Like, I actually, like, just from a tennis perspective, like, I don't get offended, like, if coaches will say, this is wrong, or you're not doing this well enough, or like, or, just make comments like that. I feel like I'm actually really good at taking that in and not being offended, just sort of using it productively.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and I think too, like, yeah, you do, like, it's really rewarding when you see a player go through a transformation like that, where, as I said, it was definitely tough love. But yeah, one of the great things was that your parents actually, when we'd sort of go to your parents and they'd say, yeah, well, yeah, the coaches got some valid points there. Yeah, if you're not working hard, then and that. So I actually think that was a really good balance, that what your parents had in terms of developing they wanted to help you develop into a great player, but they also wanted to have you to become a good person and have a good relationship with you. And so I think they found, from a lot of the tennis parents that I've sort of come across, I feel like your parents struck the balance really, really well, where they were like, you're going to training no matter what. Like, so that was great for your discipline. They were kind of hard like that. But they were very, I said, that's my observations. They were super supportive of you, in every way. I never felt like, when you lost matches, they'd still sort of, you're their daughter, and you want to, and that was it. It didn't matter whether you won or lost. So I thought that was a really good approach. And the only time, as I said, they get disappointed is when there's behavior issues, which I think is on point as well. So if someone's not working hard, I think every parent has every right to say, hey, the standards that we're expecting are higher than that. We don't do that. So I thought that was really interesting. And I guess moving into the next stage, we'll talk about, I always found it really interesting, talking to both your parents really early on, particularly when you started to track really well. You're in the National Academy, you started winning tournaments. I mean, you were sort of one of the players that I thought, okay, Mickey's got a she's got a pathway to the professional career. You could definitely play professional tennis, and you proved that. You won a couple of futures event, and you were 500 WTA or so. When you're 18, before going to college. But your parents were really strong on college. They were bigger. The focus to me was never about playing pro tennis. It was always, hey, we want to get her into a great college. Your dad went to Duke University and really wanted you to go there. So I guess, do you want to talk a little bit about your transition? You played a couple of events. You're always preparing your game to go to college. You got to an exceptional level just before the all of the, I guess, player bargaining happens, after you graduate from high school and all the colleges want you. So you would have been one of the most sought after players in the US. You had the opportunity to go to the university that your dad went to, which I feel like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was always the sort of, almost like the plan or the blueprint that you were to sort of follow. Go to the university your dad went to, which is one of the best colleges in the US. Talk us through, I guess, what happened. You went over there, you did some trials, you didn't end up there, but what was your sort of thinking around all that?
You mean with the Duke, but like between Duke and Rice?
Yeah, just, I guess, your college selection process.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me, the reason why I didn't want to go to Duke, and this was honestly like the most heartbreaking thing for me, because I always wanted to go to Duke and I never thought I'd be good enough to get in. And then I actually, and then I was tracking really well and I actually was good enough to get in. But I ultimately decided not to go to Duke because I didn't like what the players said about the coach, which again is so important. I didn't like what the players said about the coach, and what else? Yeah, and a lot of them were getting injured, and there was just sort of a lot of negative feedback actually from some of the girls on the team, which was a really bad sign to me. But ultimately, I ended up going to Rice, and I visited, I want to say, maybe 4 or 5 schools. I would say if you're in the college process, definitely go and actually physically visit the college, because it's very different, sometimes from what they'll tell you, and just actually meeting the girls, or the boys on the actual team is so important, because you can see what kind of players that coach recruits. And something that was actually really great about Rice was that my coach, Elizabeth, she actually genuinely really cared about the personalities of the actual girls on the team. That was something really big for her. So whenever we would have a recruit that would come by, she'd always be like, to some of us, what did you think? Do you think they're nice? So what I actually really respect about Elizabeth is that she really cared about that. And that was why I chose to go to Rice, is because, obviously she was a great coach. That was massive for me. But all the girls on the team were so lovely, and the environment was so welcoming. And I could just really see myself in that environment for the 4 years. But I ultimately chose to go to Rice as well because I wanted a great education. And Rice is ranked, I think it's around number 15 or 16 in the country, not for tennis, but academically. So I knew that if I went to Rice or a school like that, I was going to have, a ton of job opportunities after, which my parents also really cared about. My parents are massive on education as well. So they really just didn't want me to go pro. They always wanted me to have a backup, which I think is great. The education perspective from Rice, it was a really small school. There's only about 5,000 kids. So it was really nice, just walking around campus, seeing people that all the time. Really beautiful school and great facilities. So that was, but mostly the coach was the biggest thing for me, and the academics.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess just to read out the stats there, that's ranked 15 or 16 out of, I think, 4,500 colleges, so it's one of the top universities there. And I guess what would you say? I know college for you, your game sort of moved along sideways over that time. It wasn't like some players go to college and massively develop and go to the next level. For you, you obviously had education as sort of the top priority. Do you want to talk through, I guess, what were the main things that you got out of college? What did you really enjoy about it? And maybe just talk us through that.
Yeah, so I loved college for the independence factor. I was very sheltered, as Ryan and I spoke about. We spoke about this a couple of days ago, but I was super sheltered. So when I went over and actually had all this independence, to make all my own decisions, to kind of live as an adult, I actually ended up really enjoying that. And I thought I was going to struggle a bit, but I loved that. I actually really loved the training environment at college as well. when when you play matches at different schools and at your home game, there's always music blaring as you're warming up. The vibe is so great, and you're best friends with all the people on your team. So that was something that I really loved, as well, was sort of just that environment with the different, the girls on my team, and sort of just having that support from your teammates to sort of pick you up when you're not feeling it. And it's sort of interesting in tennis because, I mean, it is an individual sport. So you grow up and it's super, you have your friends, but you're super competitive with them anyways. But then actually going to college is great because suddenly you're actually on a team with these people, and they really want you to win and you really want them to win. And it's just sort of that great environment. So the team aspect for me was so much fun because I'd never experienced that. And actually having people to lean on, like when I was feeling pressure in matches, there's people on either side of me to look at and sort of help me. And college is very sort of like focal. People are really hyping you up and encouraging you. So I loved that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff there, Mickey. And maybe just the final question before we'll open it up to anybody else who might want to ask questions. So you're back now from college. You've graduated with a degree. What are your sort of plans moving forward?
Yeah, so I am doing a master's of management at the University of Sydney right now. I'm doing it part-time, so I'm going to take between 1.5 to 2 years to do that. And the reason I'm taking a little bit extra time is I'm really trying to get my tennis, back up to a really high level. And hopefully if I can, continue to really raise my level, I'm hoping to go back on the pro circuit and play some more tournaments. Maybe I'll go back to Thailand. I don't know if they eventually have some there. But yeah, I mean, I'm honestly even looking to go to the States, I think in a few months or a month or so. So yeah, I'm honestly just trying to juggle both. I'm not putting a massive amount of pressure on myself, to become, to achieve something super unrealistic. I genuinely just want to see how good I can get. And I love competing. And I'm honestly really just doing it because I enjoy it. And I want to sort of maximize my potential.
Yeah, nice. That's a great, it's a great place to be. Just trying to be the best you can, and it's a great game. And I think it's a really great thing that we love seeing is when players, they work so hard as a junior. Some have aspirations to play at the pro level. Some want to just be good college players who get a great degree. When we see people come back and continue to play even recreationally or just competitively in badge and team competitions and things like that whilst they're pursuing a career, it's a great thing. Obviously you're going to have a crack at the pro circuit and that, but yeah, it's a great game to keep playing. What we might do at this point is just open it up for any questions. I think you should be able to do it in the group chat. So we'll just give a minute or two for any questions you might have for Mickey regarding anything about her journey, lessons that she's learned along the way. I'll open it up for a minute or so here and see what questions start coming through. Can you see the chat box, Mickey?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, okay. All right. So yeah, good platform, guys. Anyone who wants to ask a question, you're up first there. Petra says hi.
Oh, I love Petra. Say hi to Sarah for me.
All right. So can you see? I'll read the first question to you there. So, thanks for sharing your story. Did you do any other sports before you decided on tennis?
Yeah, so I actually did a ton of cross country running, which I actually was pretty good at. But my personal opinion is running is, I didn't enjoy the competitive aspect. I thought it was super nerve wracking. And it's not, tennis is so different, just like from a competitive aspect, there's so much strategy and so many different things going on. So I ultimately just decided on tennis just because I liked it more. I found cross country so stressful, but I did do a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just reading the second question.
Yeah, I'll read it out loud. So, how did just so the audience can see it as well? So, how did you juggle your studies and playing on the pro tour before you went to college?
Sorry, I just read the third question. I'm laughing.
Yeah, I can see that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Um, how did I juggle my studies playing on the Pro Tour before you went to college? It was actually really tough because I was doing the HSC and I was traveling a lot. My really good friend, Alex Bozovic, actually is also the same age as me. And we were traveling around together doing the HSC. And so honestly, it really helped just having a friend there because we were super disciplined. We would go and train and then we'd come back and sit together and we put like a, 2-3 hour timer on to study for HSC. I'm actually pretty good. I didn't used to be, but I'm actually pretty good at juggling both. And I think sometimes when you actually don't have a ton of time to do something or to study, it makes it, it gives you that sort of extra boost to be like, okay, I actually don't have that much time to do it, so you don't procrastinate as much. Well, at least that's what happened for me. Because even when I was in high school, I'd get back from like the NA training, I'd get home at like 8:30. And this was after like a full day of school and everything. And it was really tough because I had a ton of work, but because I actually didn't have a ton of time, I didn't have the whole afternoon to waste. I actually ended up using my time really efficiently. So yeah, I'm pretty disciplined. So I'll give myself that.
Yeah. It's an interesting question too, because like we had a chat with Michael Zhang, one of our students that ended up being accepted into Harvard University, and he had I think he got 1,500 on his SATs twice, which is the perfect score. I think one in every 8,000 students that sits the test, gets 1,500, or is it 1,500 or 1,600 the max? But he was sort of talking about how he used to study on the train on the way into school. Sometimes on recess breaks. If he was behind, he'd be studying during recess, and public transport, literally any spare moment. It goes to show, he didn't get to quite as high a standard as what you were at, but he got to sort of almost top 20 in Australia for his age group, but he was unbelievable academically because he literally studied in every spare minute. So it goes to show it sort of is possible there. I mean, do you want to, we've only probably got another 5 minutes or so, Mickey. So did you want to answer the question around the spectacles?
Yeah. Okay. So my eyesight has only gotten really bad in like the last 2 years. But I don't play tennis with glasses on. I'm actually getting LASIK surgery because contacts don't fit my eyes properly, which is bad. But my eyesight's not that bad. Like I can still see the ball like pretty well when I'm playing. But yeah, I'm getting LASIK surgery in like 4 or 5 months. So it'll be no more spectacles for me. Okay, Ryan, I can see these other ones as well. I'll just try and
just read them out as you go through them.
Yeah. So the next question is, what are your top 3 tips to juniors looking to pursue a pathway in tennis, pro or college? Okay, 3 tips. Wow. Okay. Looking to pursue a pathway in tennis. Okay, first thing I would say is work ethic. Like if you don't have a really good work ethic, I wouldn't expect, to go that well. I think you have to be naturally super competitive, and disciplined. I don't know if maybe that could be my 3. Yeah. I can't remember what the first thing I said was. Yeah, work ethic, I would say. Yep. You got to be super competitive. Like even in practice, like when I lose practices, like practice sets and stuff, it's still like it still hurts. Not to an extent where I really get upset over it, but that really helps me as well because then you have that, that replicated pressure sort of in your practice sessions as well. And then just you've got to be disciplined, show up for training every day if you want to be good. How did I get a US college scholarship? What was the process? So I actually had a lot of schools reach out to me. It sort of depends like on your situation, your ranking, etc. But the college coaches will pretty much walk you through the process if you're interested in the school and they're interested in you. But if you're interested in a specific school, what I did was I emailed the school. Like I emailed a lot of different schools and sort of asked them what the process is, like, what they could offer me, etc. So I would suggest just either reaching out to the coach or, checking your Facebook messages constantly. Because I remember I got a ton of Facebook messages from different coaches.
Yeah, and just to probably add in there, like Mickey was very fortunate. Not fortunate, she worked very hard to get to a level where she was, as a freshman would have been, one of the best players in the United States, college for those sort of year groups. So very, very, very highly sought after. The majority of players wouldn't probably have too many, sort of colleges reaching out to them. And just, and I'll just say this because I think there's 4,500 colleges to pick from. we do have a lot of our students use the services of Study and Play USA, who are essentially a college placement service, try and get people, students matched up with the right colleges, right students, because it's very, very tough to get it right, without somebody that knows a lot of colleges. As you know, Mickey, you've got to find the balance of the education. You've got to have the right coach, you've got to have the right lineup. You probably want to have the right scholarship. There's a lot of elements to it. And it can be a mistake that we've seen, people just reaching directly out, looking at one or two colleges and then picking it. Is sort of a bit of a lottery.
Yeah.
It's good to have an expert over there. Mickey, we'll go through the last two questions on there. What surprised you most about playing on the Pro Tour?
I would just say the standard, what I noticed in junior tennis is, you get a few easy matches usually in the first couple rounds. People who stop trying, people who make, bad decisions, lots of errors. That doesn't happen when you get to the pro level. You really got to fight for every match. And I never really had easy, like in the tournaments that I won, the first round matches, they're really tough, and you have to be super switched on that day and willing to play for hours if that's what it takes. So I would just say, the standard, like every match is so much harder. You have to really put a lot more into it. You don't get those easy, 6 loves. Well, some people still do, but I personally, you don't get those 6 loves when you move to that really high level.
Yeah.
Just looking at the next question.
What do you sort of answered the next question pretty well in the sort of three things. So maybe just go into the last one, Mickey.
At what age did you so my parents really pushed the college thing. So I honestly never even thought about becoming a pro until I was like 16 or 17, and I started playing the pro circuits. And I actually think that was good for me, that I was really like sort of realistic to begin with. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to see what happens after that. I'm going to see how I'm playing, etc. But maybe when I was about 16 or 17 and I actually started doing really well, and it was super enjoyable to play. I find it super enjoyable to play those ultra competitive, high stake matches on the pro circuit. But yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think looking at the time there, we're pretty much out of time there now. And so, Mickey, thanks so much for your time here today. A couple of really, I guess, good messages, I think, out of that. I think from the player side, I think, that whole thing around the work ethic is a really good message there. And I definitely saw both sides of you where you probably didn't have one in the beginning, but then you got one, and competitive nature was probably always there. And just that discipline in terms of, I think your discipline came through really well from a playing perspective, but also from an education perspective, as you mentioned as well. You're not going to get into a college like Rice University if you're not disciplined academically as well. So, but there was some great messages there from a playing perspective. I think from parent perspective as well. Really like the message just around that your parents were tough, based around behaviors and values that they were expecting of you. And I think that's completely fair and reasonable from a parent. You got your child's not working hard. It's good to clip them over the ears. I don't think they did that, but they were, but I think just being super supportive at the same time, never showing any difference. Your parents never showed any difference when you won or lost a match. And I thought that was great. And that's why you guys are such a close family, one of the closest families I think I know, with your parents and your sisters. I think it's really nice to see. So so thanks so much tonight, Mickey. Thanks so much to everybody who's on the call tonight. Really appreciate you guys joining in, and thanks again, Mickey.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Ryan.